Have you heard of FGM?
No.
No.
No, I haven't.
Have you heard of FGM?
I have not. No. What is that?
FGM is female genital mutilation. It is a brutal act inflicted on young girls across the world.
This topic is not often discussed and is rarely in the news, but we were surprised to find a good number of adults who'd heard about it. Female genital mutilation, or FGM, is the act of cutting. Female genital mutilation, or FGM, is the act of cutting and removing parts of the female genitalia, specifically the labia and clitoris. Proper anesthesia is hard to come by in the countries where FGM is most popular, and it's also very expensive. As a result, it's rarely used, and usually not administered in the correct amounts when given. Considering that some of the procedures can last up to 20 minutes, the excruciating pain is more than enough to cause the poor woman to go into shock, which is when FGM becomes life-threatening. There are 3 types of FGM. 90% of women affected by FGM have types 1 and 2, which are the most common. 10% of women have type 3 FGM, which is the most severe. It's also known as infibulation. Type 3 is most common in countries such as Somalia, Djibouti, and Sudan, where the Daughters of Eve summarized the 3 types of FGM. Type 1 is a partial or total removal of the clitoris, and, in very rare cases, only the fold of skin surrounding the clitoris is removed. Type 2 is a partial or total removal of the clitoris and the labia minora, with or without excision of the labia majora. The labia surrounds the outside of the vagina. Type 3 is the narrowing of the vaginal opening through the creation of a covering seal. The seal is formed by cutting and sewing over the outer labia, with or without removal of the clitoris or inner labia.
Okay, nice light topic on an afternoon. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's gross.
I am very glad I have a penis.
Oh, of course I have.
Okay.
I've never heard of it referred to in that way. But yeah, I mean, Africa, yeah, it's a huge problem.
The prevalence of FGM around the world is astounding. 140 million girls have undergone FGM that we know of. That is roughly the size of Russia's entire population. Every 11 seconds, a girl is mutilated. Approximately 8,000 girls are at risk of FGM every day. The number of girls at risk in the United States has quadrupled since 1997 and is now at 507. FGM is only illegal in 17 states in the US. 23,000 girls are cut in the UK every year. 14 countries in Africa have rates over 50% of their female population mutilated. Somalia has a rate of 98%. And of those girls, 90% have the worst form of FGM inflicted on them, infibulation.
It really seems like something that shouldn't have to happen, and especially in these, like this day, like it doesn't seem like a modern idea or something that would ever concern any society today.
It is pretty cringeworthy when you think about what happens. It's not something that ever needs to be done. There's no real necessity for it. In our culture, we kind of see something like that as relatively barbaric and just not needed. So.
Well, I've heard that it is both sort of cultural and sort of religiously motivated, and that girls can die from it. Girls can never be able to urinate properly after having genital mutilation. I've heard that it's done because in an effort to quote unquote protect their virginity and protect their purity. And sadly it has the result of often making, and of course really uncomfortable
I know that it takes place a lot in Eastern African countries, places like Eritrea, and in countries like that where that practice is still conducted.
The communities say the cutting is a way to keep the girl innocent and pure until her marriage. In reality, it turns into a punishment instead of a blessing bestowed upon the child. The AHA Foundation mentions how a woman who has succumbed to FGM is much more desirable in the eyes of a man, and having gone through FGM can often be a determining factor for marriage. After these marriages take place, the intercourse not only causes excruciating pain for the woman, but can also result in even more damage to the affected area. This inevitable pain is also used as a punishment for any premarital sex, according to the AHA Foundation. However, admitting to this would officially classify FGM under child abuse, which is an irrefutable reason for it to be banned everywhere. The Daughters of Eve recognize that in some cultures and communities, the female genitalia is considered unhygienic and unsightly, so by removing them, it is thought to keep the woman clean. These communities go so far as to deny unmutilated women clean water and food. As a result, many women are forced into FGM and end up sacrificing their bodies and health for the most basic requirements of survival.
A misconception is that Islam openly supports FGM. While this is not entirely true, Islamic laws are not against the act. Muslim leaders are rather indifferent on the subject, simply saying that it is not a requirement. One organization, Inside Islam, attempts to clarify controversial topics from the West that oppose Islamic teachings. When asked about FGM, the founder writes, "It would be incorrect to say that female circumcision has no place in Islam, regardless of whether it is allowed or not allowed, simply on the grounds that there is not enough evidence supporting either position." So, while they may lead you to believe that FGM is a problem outside of Islam, the fact of the matter is that the majority of cases are committed by Muslims in the name of Islam, budding from the already unfair treatment of women. And while Islam as a whole says that FGM is unnecessary, Mali, Mauritania, Guinea, and Egypt all pronounce that FGM is a religious requirement. All of those countries have extremely high rates. In Guinea, 97% of girls are cut. Egypt has 91%, Mali has 89%, and Mauritania has 69%.
I don't think so. I think that's shit, honestly.
Like, what type of religion would want people to, like, do stuff like that? And, like, why would you do it incorrectly? Like, if it was something, why wouldn't they, like, respect you and do it with, like, clean utensils and stuff? I don't know. Like, that's just, like, mean.
I don't think they justify the actions at all. I don't think anything could justify that. It sounds awful.
Not necessarily. I don't think that's okay. When you think about the practice of what actually goes on and the results of it, it's something that should probably end up getting retired, for lack of a better word. I think that
Yeah. I mean, we should probably focus on the bigger issues, like Muslims blowing things up, but, like, that's also...
Good point.
That's in there, I guess, with things we should fix.
that through education, I think that's a way to let people know the unnecessariness of it.
I don't know, because it definitely seems like something that people should know more about, but once you know more about it, it doesn't seem like there's a lot you can do to stop it, you know?
There are some rather simple solutions to spreading awareness of FGM and stopping it for good. Most importantly is education, like this video. Spreading the word and informing others about the topic is the first step towards abolishing it worldwide. Another good step would be schools including this in high school lesson plans, for example. This would show the government's involvement and how they're finally choosing to acknowledge FGM as a world issue that needs attention. And finally, by supporting and being aware of organizations whose main goals are stopping FGM, you can be more active as a defender of human rights. Even just mentioning such organizations like the Daughters of Eve, World Health Organization, AHA, African Women's Organization, HILFE, the Desert Flower Foundation, Forward, and the FGM National Clinical Group can get you one step further.
Unfortunately, FGM is most common in countries where it's illegal, like Egypt, Guinea, and Djibouti. This shows the ineffectiveness of the government and the lack of motivation to prevent something so barbaric. However, there are simple strides that could be taken by these governments to decrease the percentage of women affected. For example, the 97% in Guinea. For one, campaigns could be raised against FGM, whether it is just billboards on the side of the roads, like in Uganda, or created clinics to protect women who've gone through FGM. Considering that this is a tradition so deeply rooted in many cultures and communities, changes won't be seen overnight. But any way to show that those who refuse to go through the surgery are still welcome at somewhere else would go a long way. In addition to campaigns, steps could be taken to show that the laws prohibiting FGM in the countries that have them are actually being enforced. Just the public act of arresting and sentencing one of the doctors who performed the surgery. Hopefully this will have a ripple effect of frightening other mutilators in the community and country, resulting in a significantly smaller number of doctors, therefore a smaller percentage of women who have been affected. Governments from countries who are not as directly affected by FGM, like the US, can also participate to abolish this practice. These countries are already so poor, in their eyes, FGM is not the most pressing matter at hand. They will find no room in their budget to actually enforce this law, especially when it's so largely ignored. Providing aid to these countries would allow them to make the efforts towards preventing any more women from being subjected to these horrifying mutilations. However, even if you're just a citizen who wants to help out, there are still ways that you can prevent FGM.
As soon as minutes after the mutilation or even during the procedure, the consequences of FGM become clear. The pain is one of the worst immediate side effects, as Ishtar describes in her account. At the same time, I can hear my little sister scream. I never heard such scream. Even today, when I shut my eyes, I can hear her screaming. The World Health Organization reported on the excessive bleeding caused by the surgery, which can lead to septic shock and eventually death. Additionally, difficulty urinating is common due to swelling or extreme pain immediately afterwards. Infection is also extremely common due to the unclean conditions where FGM takes place, in addition to the unsterilized instruments. These can all lead to problems that survivors will have to deal with through the rest of their lives.
If a victim survives the initial procedure, the long-term effects will plague her for the rest of her life. Almost all victims, regardless of age, suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. This may lead to self-hatred, depression, anxiety, flashbacks and nightmares, memory loss, and anger issues. Women suffer from chronic pain and are often unable to walk. Urination is nearly impossible and extremely painful, as is menstruation. Very few women are able to have children because it damages the internal organs as well as the external. If a woman does become pregnant, the fetus is unsafe and labor will most likely cause death to both the mother and child. All of these factors are a constant reminder of the abuse the woman once endured.
Brave girl, Ishtar, everyone said. I remember getting lots of sweets, toys, and money to congratulate me. At the same time, I thought, you're now a part of these people, and you're treated differently. The very special girl now.
She was blindfolded, stripped, and laid on the ground. Heavy women sat on her arms, her chest, her legs. Her mouth was stuffed with a rag. Her clitoris was cut off with a crude knife. Despite profuse bleeding, she was forced to walk, was beaten, and had hot pepper water poured into her eyes. The day before our mutilation was due to take place, another girl was infibulated and she died. We fought back, but our parents told us it was an obligation. I really thought I was going to die from the pain. Afterwards, they tied ropes across our legs so that it was like we had to learn to walk again.
One of my neighbor daughters who was playing with us came to me.
You must be excited.
My response, "What for?" I didn't know what she was talking about.
You will be a big girl now. All you have to do is be very brave and not cry.
I know that it's probably one of the worst things you could do to a girl.